It's time again for Northwestern Outdoors Radio, the show covering fishing, hunting, and all sorts of outdoor recreation and destinations right here in the region you live and play in. Northwestern Outdoors is brought to you every week by Max Lure Company, makers of the world-famous wedding ring spinner, by Loophole, America's Optics Authority, and by Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter. Northwestern Outdoors is also sponsored by Wallowa County in Northeast Oregon, where you'll find both nature and fun. By Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing, offering you the affordable Canadian fishing trip of a lifetime. And by Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors. So grab your fishing rod or hunting gear, load up the boat or lace up your boots, and let's head outdoors with your host, John Cruz.
Are you in the Christmas spirit yet? I hope our annual Christmas gift giveaway show helped out with that. We certainly had a lot of response last week and requests for the 13 gifts we gave away. If you didn't win one of those gifts, I'm afraid you'll have to go shopping. I do have a few suggestions for you, though, courtesy of our sponsors. One idea for hunters and wildlife watchers alike is a pair of loopholed binoculars. They're durable, waterproof binoculars, come in various sizes and price points, and are sure to be a big hit. If you know any hikers, kayakers, or rafters, I'm sure they would appreciate the Striker Backcountry Camp Stove from Camp Chef. And if you're looking for stocking stuffers, fishing lures work great. And whether you're after trout, walleye, kokanee, or salmon, Max Lure Company has got plenty of lures to fit the bill. By the way, you can find all of these suggested gifts and more at Sportsman's Warehouse stores near you. There are over 60 of them around the country, and many of them are right here in the Northwest, and they've been offering some great sales this holiday season. Another idea, the gift of travel. Book a stay any time of year in Wallowa County in Northeast Oregon. This is some of the most beautiful country you'll find in the Northwest, and Wallowa Lake is a great destination to visit any time of year. Be sure to bring your fishing pole for the trout and kokanee there. You can find places to stay and places to eat at WallowaCountyChamber.com. Or you can really impress the angler you love by buying him or her an all-inclusive saltwater fishing vacation for salmon, halibut, lingcod, and more out of Port Hardy, BC with Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing. I took my family up there last summer, and it was truly the best saltwater fishing experience I've ever had. Okay, enough of the Christmas gift ideas. Let's get on with the show. We're going to start off talking about kayak fishing in Western Washington with Max Lure Pro Guide Brad Hole. He's the owner of Kayak Fishing Washington. It turns out kayak fishing does continue in the Evergreen State during the winter, and Brad will give you some ideas about where to go. Speaking of Max Lures, Lance Mers is back for another extended Max Minute, and then we'll be talking to Tony Bynum. Tony is a well-respected Montana hunter, outdoors photographer, and conservation advocate, and we'll actually get to chat with him twice during the hour. Our first conversation will cover the free e-guide he is giving away on his website with tips about taking better pictures of those majestic animals we know as elk. Our second interview with Tony is about the Wilderness Society, an organization doing great work to preserve our wilderness lands in the Northwest and beyond. Throw in some outdoors news and our Sportsman's Warehouse Trivia Question of the Week. And as usual, we've got a full hour of outdoors fun and information coming your way. But first, it's time for another edition of Sportsman Spotlight. This week, Matt Rice talks to well-known hunting writer and TV personality Ron Spomer, who shares some amazing facts about pronghorns. Sportsman Spotlight is sponsored by Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing, offering those great all-inclusive vacations out of Port Hardy, BC. Find out more at coastwidesportsfishing.com.
This is Sportsman Spotlight with Matt and Tom. One thing that makes the West so unique is our variety of game that can't be found anywhere else in the world. One particularly special to the West is the pronghorn, or speed goat as some like to refer to them as. If you're looking for a good hunt to introduce a youngster or your wife to the sport, I would suggest to take them on an action-packed antelope hunt. With abundant numbers, antelope hunting makes for an exciting voyage. Usually it's not the lack of antelope sightings, but a test of skill and patience to get within range. It's the closest thing to an African safari hunt that I have ever experienced. Here's Ron Spomer with some fun speed goat facts.
It is the only horned animal in the world that has a prong to its horn. The horns are corkscrewed in Africa and rippled and all sorts of things, but they never fork. So this is the only forked horned animal in the world. It also is the only horned animal that sheds its horns every year, just the sheath, the outside part. And that is what is shed every year annually around late October. The new horn starts to grow from the base, and it shoves this old horn, falls off, and there's already a black horn being grown underneath. So you really never see a buck antelope without his horns. This is a prey animal and a very fast one. The fastest animal in North America, but the fastest land mammal, and it's second fastest in the world. Only a cheetah has been recorded running faster than a pronghorn.
I can honestly say I didn't know any of these facts before today, but if you keep your mind open, you can learn something new every day.
Thanks for listening to Sportsman Spotlight with Matt Rice.
A quality and affordable fishing adventure is waiting for you off Vancouver Island with Chad's Coast-Wide Sports Fishing. Located in Port Hardy, British Columbia, you can drive or fly to your all-inclusive guided fishing vacation. Whether you're after big salmon, heart-fighting halibut, or a cooler full of red snapper and lingcod, you can catch it all here. Better yet, your lodging, meals, and fish processing are all taken care of. Want one more reason to go? The price. With the Canadian dollar exchange rate where it is right now, your U.S. dollar goes further. Space is limited, so go to coastwidesportsfishing.com to book your trip. That's coastwidesportsfishing.com for an incredible BC fishing adventure.
You demand quality performance from your binoculars, whether you use them in the field, on the water, or at a stadium. But you don't want to spend a fortune. That's where the BX Mackenzie binoculars from Leupold come in. These armored, waterproof binoculars are both comfortable and dependable. Look for your Mackenzie binoculars at quality sporting goods retailers near you, to include your Cabela's, Sportsman's Warehouse, or Northwest Bi-Mart stores. BX Mackenzie, bringing your world into sharper focus, only from Leupold.
I'm gonna take you fishing, honey. You're gonna love it. Gonna get up before the sun.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. Have you ever gone kayak fishing before? It's really becoming quite the craze. Most people that do it in the summer months, but you can do it this time of year too. With us here to tell you more about it is Brad Hole. He is a Max Lure Company pro staffer. He's also a kayak angler and guide who hails from Ballard, Washington. Brad, welcome to the show.
Hi, good morning, John. How are you?
I'm doing great. You know, winter months, kayak fishing, is it still doable?
You know, it is. Even with a couple inches of snow on the ground, it is if you're prepared. You really have to dress accordingly and make sure you're safe on the water, even like boat fishing. So I practice safety all the time, whether that's I wear a dry suit out on the water and PFD, life jacket, and I'm always dressed for the conditions.
So very wise right off the bat to get that out there. But let's talk about where you're fishing this time of year in Western Washington out of a kayak.
Well, the pickings are a little slim when the temperature drops. If I'm fishing close to home, kind of my go-to spots are, I love to fish Lake Sammamish for sea-run cutthroat trout. There's some resident fish in the lake too, but some of these fish go back and forth and out into the Sound and back. Lake Washington's another good option. Lake Washington's a much bigger lake, so it's sometimes a little tougher to find them, but you tend to find bigger fish in there, in my opinion. So I'll target them. Trolling, a wide variety of smaller lures and spinners. And I'll often watch I'll look at the Washington State Fish and Wildlife trout plants too. And this time of year, they plant some usually bigger broodstock. Tends to be over on your side of the mountains versus over on the western side. But they'll put in 50 or 60 big 9 to 12 pound rainbows in there, and they're sometimes fun to target as well.
Well, there really are some good lakes to fish in Western Washington that get these fall plants. The one I always think of is Beaver Lake is a really good place to fish in the late fall, early winter months.
That's correct. I got out there actually a couple days after the planting this year and was pretty successful. I was trolling around one of those Max wiggle hoochies, a little green one tipped with a small earthworm or groundworm, and I picked up 7 fish, all 5-6 pounders, and kind of got bored of catching them. It was fun, and there was a lot of boats out on the water, but that, you're right, that is a really good fishery when they do plant with those bigger fish.
Well, that's the difference between you and me. I don't think I'll ever get bored catching 5-pound rainbows. that's a pretty successful day. Hey, when it comes to fishing for the cutthroat trout in Lake Washington, Lake Sammamish, how are you going about that? How deep? What are you using? That sort of thing.
Yeah, good question. When I first started off kayak fishing, I've got a larger kayak. It's made by Hobie, and it's got a rail type system in it. It's kind of a hybrid kayak type boat called a Pro Angler. And I put a downrigger on the side. So I was pulling a downrigger, which wasn't fun. It's just, it's one more thing to deal with. Well, I started, a friend of mine was into the fishery and was telling me about lead core line, which is kind of not really fished a lot anymore. I think with coming of downriggers and stuff, people have kind of phased it out. But what lead core is it's a heavy background line with a thin wire that goes through it. And it's color-coded every 50 feet, almost like a fly line. And you can let out, 1, 2, 3 colors. I use an 18-pound lead core, and I find that works pretty good for trout fishing. It gets you down about 6 feet in the water column. So I can let out, 3 colors, and I'm down 18 feet, and I'm kind of dropping down where the fish are. So I'm trolling that way. I'm using a kokanee, like a Lamaglass type kokanee rod or a Kika rod that's got a, springing action to it, but also can, bring in a decent sized fish. And lure-wise, I'm trolling everything from wedding ring spinners to wiggle hoochies to small, dick knights and needlefish spoons. All tend to work for these fish that are, feeding on a variety of things from hatch up top to even small bait fish like stickleback.
Wow. You're listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. We're talking to Brad Hull. He is a Max Lure Company pro staffer. He's also a kayak angler and guide in Western Washington. Let's talk about your guided trips. If somebody wants to go kayak fishing with you, is experience required, and what kind of kayak are they going to be fishing out of?
Yeah, so no experience is required. If I've taken people out with that haven't been fishing before, and what's nice about these Hobie kayaks is they're actually pedal powered. So you've got this set of fins that go underneath that lock right into the hull of the boat, and they propel you forward. It's based on how a penguin swims through the water, and it's really efficient. It doesn't require a lot of excessive force to get these pedals moving, and you're hands free for the most part, for the exception of turning the rudder from side to side to turn. But so I can put somebody in one of these stable Hobie kayaks. I use primarily these ones called the Pro Angler. They're 14 feet long, and they have tackle boxes in the hull built in. They're 38 inches wide with really comfy seats in them, and they've got lumbar support on the chair. They can go into different positions. So they're really state of the art. Hobie's really come a long way with these kayaks, and people feel comfortable in them, and that's what I want. I don't want somebody that's going to, if you get in a watercraft that you're not comfortable in, you're not going to want to fish, or you're not going to have a good time in the water because you're going to be worried about falling in. So that's what I tend to guide out of. I've got a couple of those, and I've got a Hobie Outback, which is more of a sit-on-top style kayak that I use throughout the season if I'm hiking into a small lake or something, which it's not as heavy as say, the Pro Angler, so it's easy to move around.
Where are you taking people to on your guided trips? Obviously, Lake Washington, Lake Sammamish, but at different times of the year, you're going different places, aren't you?
Personally, I'm fishing different areas. I tend to target, when I'm taking somebody out, it usually is Lake Washington or Lake Sammamish, just because they're pretty close by. I find that people are that are going on a guided trip are usually traveling in town in Seattle and don't have a couple hours to drive to a far lake. But I'm primarily targeting cutthroat trout, rainbow trout, and I usually bring a couple bass setups too. If people's legs get tired from trolling, we'll stop and we'll throw some drop shot or crankbait at the weeds for smallmouth and largemouth bass. So it's a good way to kind of break up the day and kind of target a different species too.
Absolutely. And on top of the guiding, you also have clinics from time to time too. Tell our listeners about that.
Yeah, I do. I do a variety of things throughout the year. For instance, I usually volunteer at the Northwest Paddling Festival, which is the first week in May on Lake Sammamish. If you're interested in kayak fishing, it's a great event or just kayaking in general. It's a great event to come out to because every manufacturer is out there on the shores of Lake Sammamish, and I think it's $5 for a wristband. You can demo a wide variety of kayaks and SUPs in the market and see which one works great for you. And I also do some more dry land type clinics at like the Washington Sportsman Show down in Puyallup, which is going to be going on in January. I usually give a couple talks down there, work with one of the Hobie dealers and kind of showing off different models of kayak and talking about the sport a little bit. Sometimes work with a couple of the dealers too. Hobie's launched this thing called the First Cast program, which is usually in the spring and the summer months, where they set aside like one day a month, and people sign up for this class. It ends up being $100, and you get your choice of Hobie kayak for the day. You get about 4 hours of guided fishing. They feed you lunch. You get to see how the kayak feels on your back and learn how to fish for a particular species that we're targeting that day. And then what's nice is you can walk away from the class where you can apply that $100 towards the purchase of a kayak if you're interested, if you're in the market to buy one. So it's a nice try before you buy type program.
Oh, that sounds like a great deal. Folks, we are out of time. But if you want to find out more about fishing with Brad Hull, go to his website. It's kayakfishingwashington.com. That's kayakfishingwashington.com. Brad, thanks for sharing this with us on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thanks for having me, John.
It ain't much, but if you bail, it'll float. I'm gonna take you fishing, honey. You're gonna love it.
That's the sound you hear when a fish hits the new Sonic bait fish from Max Lure Company. This metal lure can be cast, trolled, or jigged and will catch just about anything that swims in the sea, the river, or the lake. The Sonic bait fish has a unique vibration and flutter that can be rigged in 7 different ways. With all sorts of eye-catching colors and weights available, you'll be reaching for the Sonic bait fish as your go-to lure. It's the Sonic bait fish. And that's another fish on, only from Max Lure Company.
You're back with more of the great outdoors on Northwestern Outdoors Radio with John Cruz.
It's time for another extended Max Minute.
Fish on!
With Max Lure Company. This week, once again, we had the pleasure of talking to Lance Mers with Max Lure Company. It is December, and I understand you're going to be going kokanee fishing.
That's when I start in the year, absolutely. And super excited this year because we just purchased Shasta tackle. So something that I have in my arsenal now is the 1.5-inch Pee-wee Wiggle Hoochie. And it's got a 1.5-inch squid body, 2 size 4 red hooks on it, and it's got that bill. And that bill really gives it a lot of flash and attraction when in the water. It drives the kokanee absolutely crazy.
Now, I presume you're going to be fishing this behind a Double D Dodger or maybe one of the Sling Blade flashers or Dodgers?
Yeah, depending upon my speed, you got to listen to what the fish want. You know, if you want to go for that slower trolling presentation, then definitely go with a Double D Dodger. But, you know, if you're going for kokanee and, you know, faster speeds such as, you know, Lake Roosevelt and sometimes Priest Lake up in Idaho, sometimes they want that faster presentation. So then switch over to a Sling Blade and you'll see some results for sure.
You know, Lake Roosevelt is really coming on as a kokanee fishery, and I'm hearing rumors that the next world record might be coming out of there sooner than later.
There's no doubt that probably in 2017, at least a Washington state record will come out of that lake for sure.
A few other places to consider is Lake Chelan, of course, is always a perennial favorite for kokanee, and Wallowa Lake in northeast Oregon is coming back too, and don't forget those panhandle lakes up in Idaho. Lots of opportunity to have if you're willing to bundle up and brave the elements, isn't there?
Absolutely, and you know, it's a great fishery to take your kids out fishing too because it's constant nonstop action.
It is the Pee-wee Wiggle Hoochie from Max Lure Company. Look for it at a store near you or go online at maxlure.com.
A quality and affordable fishing adventure is waiting for you off Vancouver Island with Chad's Coast-Wide Sports Fishing. Located in Port Hardy, British Columbia, you can drive or fly to your all-inclusive guided fishing vacation. Whether you're after big salmon, heart-fighting halibut, or a cooler full of red snapper and lingcod, you can catch it all here. Better yet, your lodging, meals, and fish processing are all taken care of. Want one more reason to go? The price. With the Canadian dollar exchange rate where it is right now, your U.S. dollar goes further. Space is limited, so go to coastwidesportsfishing.com to book your trip. That's coastwidesportsfishing.com for an incredible BC fishing adventure.
Hey, we're talking to Lance Mers today with Max Lure Company about a brand new lure that's just slaying the trout out there on area lakes. It's the Smile Blade Spin Drift Trout Lure from Max Lure Company. Lance, what makes this lure so special?
Well, we've got our Max Lure patented Smile Blade, our high UV components, and the Spin Drift hook, which gives it a great corkscrew action in the water.
There you go, folks. All 3 components help you catch more fish. The Smile Blade Spin Drift Trout Lure, only from Max Lure Company.
It doesn't matter what sort of adventure you're after, whether it's big game deep in the backcountry, a day of fishing out in the water, or an overnight in the great outdoors. At Sportsman's Warehouse, we've got the gear in here for what you need out there. Gear up for your next adventure at one of the Sportsman's Warehouse stores or shop online. Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. We've got a great guest for you here. His name is Tony Bynum. He hails from East Glacier, Montana. He's an outdoor photographer. He's a hunter. He's a conservationist. And he's just published a new ebook that you can get off of his website. It's called Wildlife Photography Essentials. And boy, oh boy, there's some great tips in there if you want to take better wildlife photos. Tony, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for looking me up and for agreeing to have a discussion.
My pleasure. And I really enjoyed the photos and the tips you had in Wildlife Photography Essentials, that ebook that's absolutely free off of your website. And I thought we'd go ahead and share some of the highlights from that ebook with our listeners today so that they can take better photographs. And I guess the first thing that jumped out at me was the fact that when you take photos of animals, it's not just the animal. There's usually something in the foreground or there's something in the background that really complements the picture and puts it together.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key to what I like to do anyway, and everybody has their own style, I think, or at least likes to create their own style. But for me, it's combining sort of the subject matter with a context. Where an animal is in a certain environment, and you sort of want to put a story together with a single image, and that's what I try to do most often. Is I work hard to try to figure out, the most compelling parts of a certain animal's lifestyle, either at the time or just in general. I mean, looking at, for example, elk. I used elk in this example, at least in the ebook, primarily because people relate to elk, they like them, and I tend to spend a lot of time trying to find captivating images of elk, and not just a standard picture of an elk, but like you said, putting it together with some habitat element that is either crucial to their survival or really puts them in the place in which they most often live.
Well, I loved how you did it in two of the photos that you had there. One of them basically has an elk in what looks like a slough or a lake, and the water's dripping right off of it. Another one, there's the rubbed-off bark from a jack fir that's right there next to the animal. Like you said, you really do that well. Something else that I've heard from other wildlife photographers, but you really do a good job of showing what you mean, is getting the eyes, and that's so critical to bringing a photo to life.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think it's known. I mean, people understand that connections with eyes are important. The hard part about doing it is the patience it takes to, be in a situation where that's what you're focused on, is sort of the elements are there, the animal's there, and then it's just taking the time to focus hard enough. When I say focus, I mean pay close enough attention to the habits of the animal to know when you're going to get that specific look. And it just takes time. That's what practice too. I mean, the more you know about an animal and their habits and how they act, the more likely you are to find you create an image that actually tells the story. But it really is just about spending enough time there, focusing on those elements, and then capturing it when it happens. And more often than not, you miss them because you get distracted or you get tired or you sort of like, okay, I've been here for an hour and this is not working. And then as soon as you sort of look away, you just miss it. And so it just takes a little bit of focus, and anybody can do it as long as they're paying attention and dedicated.
Well, and patience is something you mentioned. That's another key factor for great wildlife photography. There's a great photo of an elk crossing a stream, but you had to wait a long time for that picture to develop, didn't you?
For sure. The one where there's an elk, I think he's jumping across the river. It's kind of a slow part of a river there. It may have been more than 5 years, but obviously not sitting in the same spot. But every year I would return to that spot,
right?
Hoping that I would catch an elk in that setting. Well, I didn't expect to catch an elk running across that river. I expected, just a leisurely stroll across the water with a nice reflection or something. And it just turned out that this elk decided to lunge into the river and started to jump across it. And so, yeah, it was perfect for me. I couldn't have asked for a better image out of that because it wasn't expected. It was sort of, I knew I was in the right spot. If I sat there long enough, I was going to get something. The one thing people ought to know, too, and they may know about elk in the fall, is oftentimes in these low areas it's cold. So you have a lot of fog, or you have a little bit of breeze, or the colors aren't right. And in this case, everything just happened just perfectly as far as I'm concerned. And so the times that I've spent there, it wasn't because, I got other good images, but everything happened to be just right that morning. And so, again, if you find these places, put them on a list or remember and put them on a map. A lot of times I'll record places, and then I'll revisit those places year in and year out just to do exactly what I did with this image.
You're listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. We're talking with outdoors photographer Tony Bynum about his ebook, Wildlife Photography Essentials. It's available for free at his website, Tony Bynum, spelled BYNUM.com. So we've talked about the animals, the habitat, patience, the eyes. Something else that I think is really cool here, and it's again something a lot of people know, but a lot of people ignore it. Most people, when they take a picture, they are standing up, and your advice is get low to the ground.
Yeah, for sure. And you can get too low, but there's this sort of right below the plane of the eye level where, and it's intended to show dominance. So to show an animal who, in this case, these elk, in a dominant fashion, you have to get a little bit lower than they are. If you're above them, you can have a great image, but it's a different kind of image. And so getting a little bit low tends to give the animal a bigger presence in the image. And you couple that with a nice eye shot or a roll of an eye or something like that, and then it just sort of, the whole image is created with those two elements. You of course, background is nice, and I picked these images particularly because some of them have really beautiful backgrounds, others don't. But what you find is that if you capture the essence of the animal and you do happen to have a background that's a little busy, it can still be a great photograph.
One other thing I've got to ask you here, why are you offering this ebook for free? I mean, it's great advice, and they're great tips and great photographs. Why aren't you charging for this?
Well, I get a lot of requests for help. My email, I'll get, email after email after email, or I'll get it through social media where people will ask me, questions about what does it take, or how do you take great pictures, or what are you doing? And this was one way of others I have to try and just provide that information so that I don't have to respond specifically every time. It's hard to retell the story. And so it's like, well, I'll just put this together, I'll put it out there, and hopefully in the future I can just point people to some real solid elements of great wildlife photography. As far as selling, I just wanted to kind of give myself a little more time to work on other things, so I put this out there and send people to the link.
Well, I'm glad you did, because again, it's not a big read, but it's a great read with lots of great advice, lots of great photos that show exactly what you're talking about there. The website, folks, to get Wildlife Photography Essentials, an ebook that's absolutely free, is TonyBynum.com. That's BYNUM, Tony with a Y, Bynum.com. Tony, thanks so much for sharing this with our listeners and with the world on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
You bet. You're welcome. Thank you.
Leupold Gold Ring Optics are built to perform at the highest level, shot after shot, year after year. Our rifle scopes, binoculars, spotting scopes, rangefinders, and more always come through when you need them most. That's why our American-built products have a lifetime guarantee. Or as we like to say here at Leupold, they are guaranteed for a lifetime of performance, not a lifetime of replacement. Find out more about our top quality gear and our lifetime guarantee at Leupold.com. Leupold, America's optics authority.
It doesn't matter what sort of adventure you're after. Whether it's big game deep in the backcountry, a day of fishing out in the water, or an overnight in the great outdoors. At Sportsman's Warehouse, we've got the gear in here for what you need out there. Gear up for your next adventure at one of its Sportsman's Warehouse stores or shop online. Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. It's time for some outdoors news, and we start off with a story from Montana. The Montana Mussel Response Team has announced immediate, temporary emergency restrictions on the launch or removal of all boats, docks, and other structures for Tiber and Canyon Ferry reservoirs in central Montana. Matt Walcott is the incident commander for the state's Mussel Incident Response Team. He said the restrictions are necessary to prevent the spread of invasive aquatic mussels from the two reservoirs to other uncontaminated water bodies in Montana and elsewhere. The restrictions were approved by the directors of the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Montana Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. Walcott said the closure will remain in effect until ice up on the reservoirs. The larva of aquatic invasive mussels was confirmed last month in water samples from Tiber Reservoir. Ongoing sampling and testing found suspect samples from Canyon Ferry Reservoir, the Milk River downstream of Nelson Reservoir, and the Missouri River upstream from Townsend. Walcott said water samples from more than 200 water bodies in Montana are currently being analyzed. From the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, we learned that fishers have been reintroduced at Mount Rainier National Park after an absence of 75 years. 10 fishers were released in the Nisqually River watershed of the park as part of a collaborative effort to restore the species to Washington. Fishers are a house cat-sized member of the weasel family. They were eliminated from Washington by the mid-1900s through overtrapping and habitat loss. They've been listed as a state endangered species since 1998. The 10 fishers were captured in British Columbia as part of a multi-year project to reintroduce 80 fishers to the Southern Cascades. Last year, 23 fishers were released in the Southern Cascades on Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. Releases in the Northern Cascades are planned for coming years. Fishers are related to minks and otters and are native to the forests of Washington, including the Cascade Mountain Range. The elusive carnivore preys on various small mammals, mountain beavers, squirrels, and snowshoe hares, and is one of the few predators of porcupines. Next, we've got a fishing report from Hell's Canyon Sport Fishing out of Lewiston, Idaho, where owner Jason Schultz reports steelhead fishing was a little slower than usual on the Snake River for the last couple months. It seems the run was a little smaller than usual and certainly running a little late. However, the Snake River has picked up considerably now that the weather has cooled off. Seemingly overnight, the river had plenty of fish, and fishing pressure is next to nothing. Jason has practically had the river to himself the last couple of weeks, and fishing has been great, with him boating 10 to 20 steelhead each day with quite a few keepers. A lot of these fish are larger than we normally see for this time of year as well. There's also good fishing to be had on the Clearwater River, where great numbers of rather large steelhead entered the system earlier than normal, and that made for great fishing in October and November. The fishing on the Clearwater is going to stay great, according to Jason, thanks to the large return of B-Run steelhead this season. If you want to book a trip with Jason, go to his website at hellscanyonsportfishing.com. And did you ever go on a snipe hunt as a kid only to find out, at least what people told you, they didn't even exist? Well, it turns out they do exist, and you can go hunting for them along the southern Oregon coast. From the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, we learned that Wilson snipe season is open. They generally move into Coos County along the south coast in late fall and winter. At times, they can be found in good numbers. They generally like flooded grass fields and tidal flats with standing vegetation. Also, they can be found in clear cuts and other forest openings where standing water exists. They're the only shorebird that's hunted in Oregon State, and they can be hunted like upland birds. They hold like quail, even better at times. A bird dog with a keen nose can help you out quite a bit, too. The call they make when they flush and the habitat they inhabit make them easy to distinguish from other shorebirds. If you want information to help you recognize these birds, contact your local ODFW office or pick up a Audubon Society guide. We're back with Tony Bynum again. He's that outdoor photographer, hunter, and conservationist who lives in East Glacier, Montana. And Tony, I thought we'd talk a little bit about an organization you've been working with for several years now, the Wilderness Society. What is this organization all about?
Well, the Wilderness Society is all about preserving and protecting wild places. And generally speaking, their mission has always been, based on the Act itself, the Wilderness Act. And I don't need to go into a lot of detail or any really about that other than the fact that Congress established a law to protect places from motorized vehicles, from largely mechanical devices. And the idea was that, people needed a place to go to get away from sort of the activities of the world. And out of the Act came a whole bunch of different places which are now protected. And the Wilderness Society's mission really is to maintain that, presence of those wild places as well as, look at other places that need to be protected. And I have always been largely a proponent of the Wilderness Society in that we do need some of these places where wildlife can exist, where people can go and actually get away from sort of the speed of life, and slow down a little bit and enjoy the outdoors.
I agree completely. And you actually partnered with the Wilderness Society. It's called #OurWildProject. And you could see some of Tony's work at his website, tonybynum.com. Tell our listeners about this, #OurWildProject.
Yeah, so the Wilderness Society kind of struck out to provide more information about the variety of people who actually value wild places. And in doing that, they produced a number of short documentary stories of people from all walks of life, from cities to towns to, places like where I live, which is pretty remote and wild. They contacted me and asked me if I wanted to do a piece on hunting, and I was excited when they did because it's been, a goal of mine to try and bring together oftentimes different organizations who may feel like they have different goals and missions, where in this case the Wilderness Society tends to be preservationist, whereas some of the hunting community tends to be more conservation oriented in that, sometimes they didn't see things the same way.
Sure.
And yet, if you break it down, they have very similar goals in the long run. And so my thought had been for many years to try and be somebody in the middle where I can talk to the Wilderness Society and I can talk to hunters and anglers who are using the resource and try and talk to these people in ways that make more sense to both of them. And this was just a great opportunity for that. I'm a hunter, and so I enjoy wilderness and the wilderness experience, but I also hunt in wilderness areas. And so when they asked me if I wanted to do a short video on this, I was just ready to make it happen. And so they sent a crew out, and we spent a couple days in the backcountry here in Montana and created that short film. And I think what it highlights is the value of public lands generally, but more specifically wild places. And I think it did a pretty good job. I would recommend anybody go and watch some of the videos because they really are people you can relate to. It doesn't matter where you're from. You will find of the half a dozen or so documentary videos, somebody there you can relate to.
So where on the web can people see these documentaries associated with #OurWildProject?
So if you did a Google search for #OurWild, you would find that the website is actually ourwild, ourwild.wilderness.org. But a Google search of #OurWild will get you there as well. Don't forget the hashtag. It's very important. Our Wild won't come up with a whole lot, but Google's pretty sophisticated now, and they're recognizing that hashtag, and they kind of know what you're looking for once you put that in.
All right. Well, we have got to go, but if you want to find out more about #OurWild, just Google that, and you'll find out some information about the Wilderness Society as well. Tony, thanks for sharing this with us.
You bet. My pleasure.
Looking for a quality fishing adventure that won't break the bank? Then head to Canada for an all-inclusive fishing vacation with Chad's Coastwide Sports Fishing. Big salmon, halibut, snapper, and lingcod are waiting for you off Vancouver Island. But space is limited, so book now at coastwidesportsfishing.com. That's coastwidesportsfishing.com.
For 25 years, The Real News has been covering the Northwest fishing scene. Written for anglers by anglers, The Real News does not shy away from the tough issues. You can pick up your copy of The Real News at select sporting good retailers or have it mailed to your home. Just go to therealnews.com for details. As an added bonus, let them know what radio station you heard this ad on when you subscribe, and you'll get a vinyl Real News fish sticker valued at $6 as a special gift. Subscribe today at therealnews.com.
Wake up to winter in Wallowa County. Grab your camera and don your skis for some Nordic skiing adventure at Salt Creek Summit or Wallowa Lake. Or spend the day on the family-friendly slopes of Fergie Ridge. Or slip into a set of skates and enjoy some time on the ice at our outdoor ice rink. Need to warm up? Then grab a cup of coffee or hot chocolate at one of our fine coffee and confectionery shops. And when evening comes, enjoy some of Wallowa County's fine dining and gaze at the stars before you dream of tomorrow's adventures. Your winter adventure begins at www.wallawacountychamber.com.
This is the time of year to get out and cook out. So make your next meal sizzle with Camp Chef, the brand known for quality outdoor cooking. From camp stoves to cast iron, from smokers to grills, Camp Chef will change the way you cook outdoors. To eat like a king on your next adventure, go to campchef.com or visit your local sporting goods store and get cooking. Whether you're serving breakfast in the backcountry or barbecue on the back patio, savor the simplicity with Camp Chef. Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors.
Backcountry hunters and anglers, the men and women working hard to keep public lands in public hands. Check us out at backcountryhunters.org.
It doesn't matter what sort of adventure you're after. Whether it's big game deep in the backcountry, a day of fishing out in the water, or an overnight in the great outdoors. At Sportsman's Warehouse, we've got the gear in here for what you need out there. Gear up for your next adventure at one of the Sportsman's Warehouse stores or shop online. Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter.
One more time this week for Northwestern Outdoors Radio with John Cruz.
Got a few upcoming events to tell you about with Christmas in mind, and I don't know if there's any tickets still left for the popular candlelight tours at Lewis and Clark Cavern State Park, but these guided walks in southwest Montana definitely qualify as a unique adventure. These tours are available December 17th and 18th, and also on December 29th and 30th. There's tours throughout the day. Tickets have been on sale since November 28th. You just call the state park to get them and see if they've still got availability. The tour is 2 miles in 2 hours, a mile and a quarter. This is outside, and you'll probably be walking to and from the cave through snowy conditions. But on the bright side, when you're done, coffee, hot chocolate, and cookies will be available at the visitor center. Another thing you can do is check out the Eagles along the Skagit River and then go on a guided hike this weekend and next weekend from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Rockport State Park in Northwest Washington. Staff and volunteers will provide 30 to 45-minute guided hikes through the lush forest that includes lots of old-growth trees, some of them 300 years old and 250 feet tall. You can also drop by the Discovery Center and enjoy some refreshments while warming up by the wood stove. Finally, if you want to get into the holiday spirit, check out literally several hundred thousands of lights on display at Shore Acre State Park on the southern Oregon coast or at the Botanical Gardens in Boise. I've been to the latter place and can tell you it is spectacular, and I've heard the same about Shore Acres as well. And now it's time for your Sportsman's Warehouse Trivia Question of the Week. You won't find this fir tree in many houses sporting Christmas ornaments. That's because this tree, found at higher elevations in the Northwest and the Rocky Mountain West, has its needles turn from green to gold in the fall before shedding them. Do you know the name of this golden conifer? If you do, go to our Facebook page at Northwestern Outdoors Radio or contact us through our website at northwesternoutdoors.com and let us know what tree we're talking about here. One person who guesses right will win the $25 gift card we give away every week from Sportsman's Warehouse. While you're on the web, be sure to tune into our show on WRVO Radio. You can catch our sister show there as well, America Outdoors Radio. The website to go to is renoviolaoutdoors.com. This is an internet station dedicated to outdoors programming 24 hours a day. The website again, renoviolaoutdoors.com for WRVO Radio. That's all for this week. Christmas is coming up in just a few days, and I hope it is a very merry one for you. Until next time, take care. God bless, and make it a point to spend some time outdoors.